What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way. God is preeminent, period. I hope to keep him number one, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different. And I don't apologize for that. Today's episode specifically, we're going to be talking about the biggest small game in town. Now, perhaps like me, when you hear the term small game, you may think of rabbits and squirrels. Grew up hunting those. That's kind of what springs forefront in my mind. But there's a lot of other game in between the dove and the deer. How about fox? How about a badger? Or a javelina? Now there's a whole list that I'll get into, because the more I thought about it and the more I looked into it, the more I came up with. But that's the thing we're going to be talking about today. In between the dove and the deer, that big small game, if I can use that oxymoronic term without being ridiculous, but big small game. We're going to talk today about what some of those species are, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out. But what some of those species are, also why we might want to hunt them, tactics to hunt them, and then good suitable gear to put these critters in the dirt. With that, before I put in the bio, I'll just real quickly say, if you want to check out more while you're listening, go to goodshepherdtraining.com. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in his very own image. A follower of Jesus Christ. A simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts: Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, thank me for that service, and you genuinely like the podcast, scroll down and hit some stars if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or maybe some other platforms. Scroll down and hit some stars to help me and hopefully help other men find the podcast. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And that's an easy way for you to help out. With that, let's get into today's topic. All right, talking about large, small game. Again, an oxymoron, but really the whole subcategory of game, a lot of times they'll be called fur bearers, although it doesn't apply to everything in this category. Now, I know jackrabbits can get pretty big, but we're talking like bigger than a rabbit here, but smaller than a deer. And there's a lot that can go into that category. Here's some that I thought of or looked up this morning. Coons, as we call them in the South. Raccoons, that is. I just saw a baby raccoon the other day when I was fishing out here in Oregon. But raccoons, real popular, at least historically in the South. It's funny how hunting culture kind of changes and things become in vogue and are not in vogue. But historically, coon hunting was a big thing. But raccoons, they can get big. And they're tough critters. Likewise, the raccoon's ugly marsupial cousin, the possum or the opossum. Nasty little creatures. Don't bother me sending a cute picture of a baby one on Instagram or something. I've hunted enough of them and I've seen enough of them to know that they're disgusting. How about a muskrat? Muskrats fall into this category. Muskrats can get pretty big. Although, to be fair, probably no bigger than a jackrabbit. How about a classic one that falls into this category? When you think of like a gentleman's hunt, a fox hunt, going back to, ye olde hunting days of yore. Men in red coats on horses, hopping over fences with hound dogs and French horns. And we think of that as like a European and British thing, but if you don't know, George Washington was a big breeder of foxhounds. In fact, I think he is the developer of the American foxhound, which tells me at that time, the time of the Minutemen and the American Revolution, fox hunting was a big thing. Again, hunting culture is a weird thing, how some things are popular and then some things aren't cool anymore. I don't really spend a lot of my time paying attention to what's cool. I'm not going to rock a fanny pack. I don't care how many people say it's back in style. I'm not going to rock a mullet. I don't care if everybody else does. But fox hunting was a big thing again. George Washington and the American foxhound. Foxes, both the gray fox and the red fox. That's a big thing. It was a big thing historically, and why is it not now? What about the entire badger family, up to and including wolverines, badgers, and skunks? And what about the small cat family? Smaller than mountain lions and jaguars. Yes, there are jaguars in North America. I just moved from Arizona where there are jaguars. But smaller than that, smaller than the mountain lion. What about the lynx, which are less common in the U.S., but not unheard of? And what about the bobcat? Bobcats can be found through big chunks of the U.S. And while it's not a mountain lion, it's certainly not a house cat either. It's a, let's say, big little cat. How about a weird one that's specific to the Southwest, the javelina? Well, I'd say wild boars and feral hogs get into the size of a deer, so you're probably using deer-sized cartridges for them, but javelinas don't get that big, so I'd put them in this category. And I thought about some really exotic ones. I don't live in Florida. What about those invasive species in Florida? What about the nutria rat? What about the more exotics? What about hunting iguanas? Iguanas get big. And while some pythons will rival the size of a deer, most don't. So I'd put them in this category as well. So you get a whole gambit of things in this medium-sized category. Also, size-wise, turkey would fall in this category, but that has become its own weird cultural thing. Guys spend all this money on super specialty shotguns and super specialty shot that costs $50, $60, $80 a box to shoot a turkey in the face. And it's this weird cultural thing. When I was a kid, it was like, oh, right before Thanksgiving, grab the old single-shot 20-gauge, head in the woods and try and shoot a turkey. And it's illegal to hunt those in a lot of the ways we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to put them in their own little category. Oh, and a big one that I don't generally think about, but depending on where you live in the U.S., what you might call it, marmots are woodchucks and rockchucks. Those are pretty big. Those little critters get pretty big. So all those animals, anything from a lynx up in Alaska to a 6-foot iguana in, the south of Florida, you get a lot of this big, small game. So why are we talking about this today? Who cares? Well, I submit to you a couple of reasons why you should care. And this goes deeper just shooting a coyote, which I forgot to mention, but is one of probably the most popular in this category, a coyote. Men, why do we hunt? Why do you hunt? There are right and wrong reasons to hunt. You can go from the complete wrong end, like you're a borderline serial killer and you just like to kill animals. I have seen enough evil in this world, both in my life, in my time at war for this nation, and not just on the Taliban terrorist side, on our side. I know that there are human beings that like to see other things suffer. I've seen that as a police officer as well. That is evil. There are a lot of people that hunt because they like to see things suffer. Now, it's not the majority, but it's probably a few. I know that there are psychopaths and sociopaths and all manner of things. And that might be not popular for me to say, but there are soldiers who are psychopaths. There are teachers who are psychopaths. Just talking numerically, if you get 1,000 of one category in the room, some of those are going to be evil people. Anyway, I don't think that's the majority, and that's a wrong reason to hunt. Likewise, if you hunt just to put a picture of yourself with a selfie of a big deer on Instagram, you're not my kind of hunter. I don't care. I guess there's nothing illegal about it, but if that's your primary reason to hunt, because everybody else does, and you want to be part of this jacked up truck, riding into side by side with your Gucci camo, post your pictures on Instagram, go ahead, but that's not me. That's not why I hunt. Let's get into some better reasons, I think, to hunt. You remember in the beginning when I said that God is number one in my life, and I hope to keep him number one in everything that I do? Well, when he created us in his own image. He created us to have dominion, to rule over, to fill the earth and subdue it. Hunting is part of that. Managing an environment, being stewards of an environment. Sometimes that means shooting a fox in the henhouse. Sometimes that means shooting a few coyotes to bring wild turkey populations from the verge of collapse. How about a greater reason? He who does not provide for his own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Can you provide for your household? Now, sometimes it's easy as going down to Walmart and buying a whole chicken and some Brussels sprouts or whatever it is you eat. I don't know, maybe for you that's a pizza. But there's no caveat to that. You ought to be able to provide for yourself and your household, your family, not to mention widows and orphans and those you're called as the man to take care of. And you ought to be able to do that whether or not the doors to Walmart are open, whether or not you can just go to the store and buy food. Whatever happens, you ought to be able to provide and protect those to whom you are called to. And that doesn't always mean that you kill things just to eat them. You're probably not killing a badger and bringing it home for your family to eat. A lot of the same tactics you'll use to kill a badger or a bobcat or a fox, you can translate that to hunting other things that you can actually feed your family. Walking quietly in the woods and patience are traits that transcend whatever species you're hunting for. Those are all reasons that we hunt. Why might you hunt these things specifically? We touched on a few. Literally you have a homestead, you have chickens, you want to keep a fox out or a coyote out. That's a legit good reason. Perhaps they're an invasive species, as in the case of, iguanas in Florida. Here's a few other reasons. A low barrier to entry. A lot of men, sadly, didn't grow up with fathers who hunt. And maybe they want to get into hunting. Hunting can be overwhelming. And since we have this culture of, I think, putting deer and turkey and things up on a pedestal, a lot of times they can be harder to hunt. A lot of times you have to, especially out west, win a lottery. You literally have to win a lottery to hunt a deer. I'm gonna leave that. That just is what it is. And a lot of these species, you don't need that. You can just go out and hunt. And right now, hunting these bigger game species is illegal in a lot of the ways that you can hunt these other species. Ways that we traditionally hunted as men since time immemorial. Things like hunting with dogs. Things that we used to hunt all manner of species with. Look at all the different dog hunting breeds that we use to hunt all manner of things. From an Irish wolfhound to my Rhodesian Ridgeback I have beside me, or behind me, technically right now. We've hunted with dogs. We've developed dog breeds specifically for hunting. And this is one of the few areas where you can still get out as a man with your dog and kill stuff and it be legal. It's a great way to hunt. One of the things I said, I might have called this at the tail end, but growing up in the South, one of my best friends and his father, they raised black and tan coonhounds. And one of my fondest memories, although we were poor growing up in the South, can't imagine a boy in the city having more fun than running through the swamp with boots and a light chasing after a bunch of hounds treeing coons. Hearing a pack of coons alert on their quarry in a tree is just something cool to behold. With the moon shining through the trees and you running through the swamp trying not to trip in a bunch of briars and eat it is a good time. A fond memory. Likewise, the first time my Rhodesian Ridgeback puppy, still a puppy, treat a full-grown bear. Hunting dogs is an amazing thing that we've done, again, for thousands of years, since time immemorial. And if you've never experienced that, this is a way to still do that. I think there's a reason in Europe fox hunting was such a big thing. Probably the reason George Washington liked it. You talk about a real sport, a real adventure in the woods. I've never had the pleasure of hunting fox on horseback with dogs, but I like hunting with dogs and I like riding horses. I imagine that would be a great time. Here's another great thing. One of the things I think that we are tribal as men, and we kind of miss that tribe in today's modern society. We also hunted as tribes. If you look at most indigenous peoples, they don't go off by themselves and hunt unless they have to. They hunt in tribes. They hunt in groups. Anywhere from, Paleolithic hunter-gatherer tribes in Africa to the Mongols to the Greeks. We think of them as mighty warriors, but they also did a lot of hunting. They hunted in groups. Look at the long hunting expeditions of the American West. We hunt in groups, and largely because of hunting culture and because of regulations and stuff today, we can't hunt a lot of the game we normally hunt in groups. When I grew up, and this may or may not have been legal, I was too young to really understand the concept of fishing game laws and stuff. Probably I did what my uncles and my father kind of told me to do, but we hunted deer in groups, and I think deer drives were pretty popular in this country up until fairly recently. We hunted in packs. We hunted in tribes. We got a group of men together and we went out and we killed stuff and we ate it and we didn't apologize for it. And again, that's largely, sadly, in my opinion, been done away with for deer and elk and things like that. Things that are really good to eat. But you can still hunt these things like that, and this may be your only opportunity to legally hunt like that, to get a bunch of guys and a bunch of dogs together and go hunt raccoons. I don't know if they do this, but maybe getting a canoe armada together in, the Everglades of Florida and going hunting these invasive species. Why? Because men are hunters. Men hunt and kill things. And again, we shouldn't have to apologize for that. There's right and wrong reasons to do that, but if you're doing it for the right reasons in a morally just way, don't apologize for it. These are ways we can still do that. These are species we can still do that with. And check your laws. The fish and game laws, you think like regular laws are convoluted? Look at fish and game laws and see how they can change from not just state to state, but one little crossing a street in the same state, in the same county. One place something can be legal and another place it can be illegal. So you need to check those laws and figure out what they are for you. A lot of times it's easier to hunt these species like that than the more traditional species. Likewise, a lot of these have very liberal seasons or no seasons. Sometimes they're not even seen as game, as in the instance of when I lived in Nevada. You can hunt coyotes all year and you don't even need a hunting license for them. A lot of times these species are what's called a nuisance species. And that lets you go out and hunt all times of the year. Looking back to our ancestors, they didn't just hunt, 2 weeks in November. They would have died. They hunted when they were hungry. They hunted when they needed food, which was pretty much all the time. Whereas none of this, hunt for 2 weeks and then you're done for the rest of the year. So if you want to hunt all year, these species are a way to do that. And again, check your laws, but in a lot of places, they have a open season all year or just a very short season where they shut it down when they're breeding in the spring. So now that we've covered some of what these game species are and some of the tactics to hunt them, not including trapping. Trapping is its own thing. Perhaps I'll do a show on one day. I was a professional trapper as well as hunter, but a lot of these species are traditionally trapped. But let's move into the gear. Now, I will say certainly a lot of these species are hunted and have been hunted with 22 long rifle, and I love the 22 long rifle. Even heard stories, I think, reiterated by Peter Hathaway Capstick. If you don't know who that is, if you've never read, I think it's Death in the Tall Grass or the Long Grass, it's worth a read. Professional hunter in Africa. But anyway, he talks about, I wasn't there so I can't substantiate, but he talks about killing elephant with 22 long rifle at least being done at least once. And plenty of poachers have shot deer with 22 long rifle, so I'm not saying it can't do it. I'm saying optimal for the job. So I say 22 long rifle is great for training. It's great for small game hunting. It is a fantastic caliber. I do a majority of my just marksmanship training and tactical training with a 22 for that reason. And it will certainly kill these species, but I don't think it's optimal. So I'm going to start the discussion one step above 22 long rifle. And I know a lot of people hunt deer with a 223, and this might give me some haters, but I'm just going to shake it off. The 223 is not an ideal deer round. A lot of people hunt deer with a 223 because they love the AR and it's so popular. And a lot of people think that every rifle, especially in Gun Culture 2.0, is supposed to be black and in 223 5.56. But I don't think there's a serious deer hunter out there that if you said, I will give you $2,000 to build your ideal deer hunting rifle, I'm going to send you to one of the 50 states you don't know to hunt one of the species of deer. I don't know anybody that would pick a 223 for that. Can you use it to hunt deer? Yes, you can use a 22 long rifle to hunt deer. You can use an atlatl to hunt deer. That doesn't make it the best tool for the job. So, those caveats in place, I'm going to start my discussion from the 22 Winchester Magnum to the 223, and in that swath of cartridges there for the rifle. So let's talk about the 22 mag. The 22 mag is not just a small step up, as some think, from the 22 long rifle. It is quite a big jump up in power from the 22 long rifle. And you talk about a great match, hunting raccoons, hunting skunks. Why would you hunt a skunk? Maybe it's under your porch and you don't want your dog to get into a fight with it. That's a whole nother set of issues. Any number of reasons. But anyway, that, badger, skunk, raccoon. Talk about fox. That's a great cartridge for fox. That 22 mag is a fantastic round for that bigger small game. It not only gives you greater knockdown at close range. Say if you got a aggressive coon in a tree trying to kill one of your dogs, and they do sometimes get ticked off and go after your dog. I know firsthand as a boy the kind of damage that a raccoon can do to a dog. I was once deer hunting as a boy, and my dog followed me into the woods. He wasn't really a deer hunting dog. I just figured he'd turn around and get home and get bored. After a while, I wasn't too worried about it. Anyway, I heard a ruckus on my way, I believe, back from deer hunting, and this has been a while. I was a young boy. It's an early memory for me. But this dog, which was, quite a bit larger than a raccoon, was fighting with this raccoon, and I thought, well, I'm not even going to bother going over there. And in my kid's mind, I'm like, it's a dog versus a raccoon. It's like a one-sided contest. This dog's just going to kill that coon, and I'll see it later at home. Well, that coon tore that dog, my dad's dog, Knuckles was its name, tore that dog up, and it survived, but it got mangled pretty bad. And I remember my father being very upset with me. Now, in my defense, I was very young. I forget what age I started hunting. Maybe 7. I don't know how old I was when this happened, but in my kid's mind, like a dog versus a raccoon, that's not even a contest. Now I know how nasty and aggressive a raccoon can be. They can be quite mean, and they can take some killing. They can be pretty tough creatures. That 22 mag, again, you can kill them with a 22 long rifle. I'm not saying not to go hunting with them if that's what you have, but 22 mag is quite a big step up, and I think advantageous for that little bit larger size game. Now, if you're going technically in order, I guess I should have mentioned this one's first if we're going in order, but I didn't because I don't think of it as much, to be honest, and that's a 17 HMR. Basically, take your 22 Magnum, and this might not be technically correct if you're a ballistician, but take your 22 mag and neck it down to 17, and you get the 17 HMR. I'd say also very good. I'd say probably better if you're west of the Mississippi, because the 22 mag gives you 2 real main advantages over the 22 long rifle. One is added power at close range, and one is longer distance with the same amount of killing powder. I said power, because you have more powder. So if I'm, say, hunting rock chucks out west where I might be shooting them from a couple hundred yards, I want the range more so than the killing power. I'm hunting a raccoon stuck in a tree in the Mississippi, river delta somewhere. I don't care so much about range because I probably can't see very far. Especially a raccoon in a tree, because if you get too far, it's going to be obscured by other trees. So I would say if you want more of the range advantage, go the 17 route. If you want more of the power advantage, go the 22 route. The 22, WMR or the 17 HMR. I guess the original one that would shine in this category, and it's still going strong, it just refuses to kick the bucket, much like the 4570, is the 22 Hornet. And its Wildcat cousin, the 17 Hornet, which is really obscure. I'll just mention it. But the 22 Hornet is fantastic for this, especially if you're a reloader, because it is the smallest cartridge I'm aware of that you, at least semi-common cartridges, you can reload for. There's probably some weird Wildcat that is different. But the 22 Hornet, it's very efficient. It's got plenty of power, much like the 22 Magnum is quite a big step up from the 22 long rifle. The 22 Hornet is quite a big step up from the 22 Magnum. And there's also what's called the K Hornet. Think of it as kind of a 22 Hornet actually improved. I'm not going to get too nerdy into this. If you're a reloader and into the 22 Hornet, you probably already know this, and if not, you don't care. But the 22 Hornet, it's still being chambered in rifles. It's still a great round for this. You talk about a great coyote round. If it's legal where you are, great for hunting beaver, great for woodchucks and rock chucks. If you want to reload and be cost effective, it's a very efficient cartridge because it takes 22 bullets. They're some of the cheapest to buy in bulk. It takes very little powder, and it's quite a big step up from 22 Magnum. It's respectable. Normally I throw out numbers and bullet weight ranges and velocities. I'm going to stay away from that in this episode, because if I do, this is going to go down a whole nother rabbit hole and it's going to be hours and hours long. But if you want to get into this kind of hunting, or you already are and you've been doing it with a 22 long rifle, maybe look at the 22 Hornet, especially if you reload. If you don't reload, probably not. But if you do reload, the 22 Hornet is worth a look. Say it is very old, but it is not outdated. It fills a niche that's still there. Talking about if If you like to reload, one thing you may want to consider is a 17 Remington, and that is basically just a 223 neck down to 17. I'm sure if you're familiar with ballistics, you can see the advantage there, again, especially if you want the added range benefit. And again, if you reload. If you don't reload, just go with 223, but if you do reload, you may look at this one. I know there's a couple other 17 Wildcats, but unlike those, this one uses a pretty common, just, basically 223 case, which you can get all over the place. If you reload, you will have the dyes and the powder and everything anyway. So the 17 223 or the 17 Remington, a really cool cartridge. Now here's one that was hot for a while. It is not so hot anymore, but it's still good for this. And I think it's just not popular because this kind of hunting is not really popular. But the 204 Ruger. The 204 Ruger is kind of an oddball. There's quite a few 17 calibers and quite a few, more than quite a few, 22 calibers, probably one of the most popular, both rimfire and centerfire cartridge calibers. But a bullet diameter of .204, that's kind of in the middle. Talked about the advantages of the 17 or the 22 in different guises. Well, what if you want to split the difference? Enter the 204 Ruger. It's basically a necked down 223 to 20 caliber. So again, it's for the reloader not bad because you get the brass and then you're already going to have the dies. The only caveat is there aren't a lot of available options in 20 caliber because it's kind of an oddball. But if you don't mind that, great coyote caliber, great obviously for anything smaller than that too. It would be great for a lot of things. Talk about great for woodchucks, rock chucks, and badgers. Out west hunting badgers in fields, going after prairie dog dens. Be great for that. 222 Remington, if you don't know, that kind of began the lineage of the 223. It's still around, but today if you're going that route, just a 223 kind of rules the roost. It was developed, despite what people think, as it being like a high-powered military assault weapon. It was originally developed from the 222 as a varmint round, as a round for this kind of use. And it's still great at that because that's what it comes from. So if you're looking for a crossover in that you want to do this kind of hunting, you want to hunt coyotes, you want to hunt fox, you want to hunt javelina, and you also want to hunt deer. This is kind of where your crossover is. Again, I don't think the 223 is a great deer round, but I will concede, because many people have done it, that it is an adequate deer round if you use really judicious and wise ammo selection. Whereas this was originally designed for a 45 to 55 grain bullet, it's been beefed up now. A real common loading is a 77 grain bullet. You're almost doubling the weight, or going 50% again as much weight. And a lot of technology has gone into these bullets because it is probably the most popular rifle caliber. So you get a lot of choices. So you could have a rifle that you hunted, let's say fox with and deer with. Now, I wouldn't use the same round, then I'm going to have to re-zero my rifle, but you could do it. The 223 really kind of is that sweet spot. And when I say 223, yeah, the 5.56, and I know that it's compatible one way and not the other, but I expect if you're listening to this, you already know that. If you blow yourself up, it's your fault, not mine. But the 223 is a great choice, and it's probably the best choice. Not because it's the best round, but because economy of scale. I had a 22 Winchester Magnum at one point, and I sold it. Why did I sell it? Because I can buy and or reload 223 cheaper than I can get 22 Magnum. So why would I even bother? For me, I'm not a gun collector. There are some certain situations I'll concede that I'd rather have a 22 mag than a 223, but I'm not a gun collector. I'm a gunfighter and a hunter, and I like to whittle that down. And I didn't think that I needed both, so I sold the 22 mag. Again, because if I'm going to annihilate prairie dogs or hunt coyotes or whatever, if I can shoot 223 cheaper, why would I bother buying or messing around with 22 mag? So for that reason, I think the 223 for, center fire rifles, especially for anything at range, is probably where you're going to settle for this. And if you're listening to this and you're into guns, you probably already have one, let's be honest. So take it out and go slay some raccoons. Go hunt some fox. Go find a badger den. And don't put your arm in there, but have some fun killing some badgers. Let's talk about another really cool cartridge and gun. Kind of got me thinking about this morning, and I'll thank the Patreon chat for this, because you don't know there's kind of an inner circle to this podcast. If you want to be part of that, become a patron. Put a Patreon link in the show notes. We talk about just random stuff all the time. We started off this morning, I checked my phone. I guess this afternoon I consciously tried to stay away from it for a couple hours this morning to focus on reading the Bible. When I checked it, there was a whole litany of things on guns, and one of the things they talked about was a cool old Ruger Deerfield carbine, and that got into talking about the 357-38 bolt action. And you know what would be a great large small game round? Would be the 38 Special, both in a handgun and in a rifle. The 77 357 made by Ruger would be really cool for this. And any other that comes in the 357-38 Special guys. Any of those kind of lever actions, any gun like that. That's just the gun that got me thinking about this morning and actually led to this podcast episode. So thanks to the patrons. But, you know, especially if you want to shoot economically, 38 Special is easy to reload. You can even cast your own bullets. You have a good source of scrap lead, old batteries, wheel weights, things like that. Especially in a world where ammo may get a lot harder to get. This would be a great choice. And again, pulls double duty because you can just load it up with some good, 158 grain 357 semi-wad cutters or, flat soft point bullets and go slay some deer at moderate ranges. Or you can load it with 38 Specials, let's say your classic 148 grain wad cutter, and because they're not going at crazy high velocities, that would be a great round for a treed coon, or a coon going after your dog. It would plow through it like a freight train going through a snowbank. Tracking that bobcat up a creek bank and seeing it standing there near some rocks at, a moderate range. That 38 Special is going to do everything you need it to if you put the shot in the right place. 38 Special 357 is arguably the most versatile handgun round, and it only becomes even more versatile with more range when you put it in a rifle. So any of those 38 357, either lever guns or bolt guns, I'm sure at some point somebody's made a pump action rifle, that would be pretty cool. But anything like that would be a nice handy thing for medium small game. And picture this, we'll keep the platforms as close as possible so you have a bolt action in both. You're out hunting with your dog and it's just treed a big coon. And that coon is having a bad hair day and it gets really pissed off and decides today's not the day it's going to be run up a tree by a dog, and it turns around and starts coming down that tree. And your hunting buddy, your dog that's looking to you for protection, is there trying to keep that coon up the tree, keep you safe, and you have to protect your dog. You are able to run up there, the situation, because you're coming up a ditch bank or something, just about the time that coon is to your dog. You want in your hand bolt action 22 Magnum or a bolt action 38 Special. I'd certainly choose that 38 Special. Now let's transition. Let's talk about what I tell you guys, if you listen regularly, is my one go-to long gun if the zombie chipmunks come. And that's a joke from an episode that's for the patrons only, Guns of the Zombie Apocalypse, that is just for the patrons. So a little inside joke there for them. But if the zombie chipmunks descend upon us in utter chaos, and I have to grab one long gun to defend myself, to feed myself, it's going to be the shotgun. It's not going to be an AR. It's not even going to be my Scar 17. It's going to be a shotgun because it's the best tool for the job. You can do anything from hunt a mourning dove to take out a grizzly bear with the same gun. The shotgun is great. And it's also great for this. The shotgun is going to be a great choice for this, depending on how you hunt and what your tactics are. Just like the rifles, I'm going to start at a certain place and end at a certain place as far as power goes. I think your minimum here is going to be your 6-shot, and I'm talking lead for this. If you live in some place where they make you hunt without lead for everything, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not going to tailor make the show and do a whole other part of the show for you. But I'm talking lead shot when I talk about this. Say your minimum for this is 6-shot, but what was commonly referred to as high brass, full power, 6-shot, 5-shot, 4-shot. And since we're usually required, at least in this country, hats off if you listen from another country. I know we have listeners in like South Africa and I believe New Zealand, and that's awesome. You guys don't have these laws, but here we're required to hunt waterfowl with steel shot, which means that since that's way more popular than this kind of hunting, it's really hard to find these shot sizes in lead. But if you can, they're a good choice. Things like your letter shots, your B, your BB, and if you can find it, your T-shot. T-shot is one of my go-to hunting loads for the 20 gauge. It is a great thing for this, for hunting coyotes. It would be great for raccoon. Things like BB and T-shot, T and TT and triple T is just under number 4 buck. And number 4 buck is where I'm going to end this for the upside of the power. And how do I know it will work well for this? Well, because I've hunted both bear and taken both bear and deer with number 4 buck. It is deadly. It is my go-to recommendation for a defensive load. I really like number 4 buck, although most people like double aught buck. I much prefer number 4 buck. It's great for this too. Since I've shot bear with it, I have the utmost confidence that it will work on a raccoon, or a badger, or a javelina. Anything from your number 6 shot up to your number 4 buck and a shotgun is going to work great. Now I say mostly number 6, number 4 shot. Number 4 shot and number 4 buck are not the same thing. I know that's confusing. But your number 6, number 5, number 4 shot and your your number 4 buck are going to be your most common in lead because, again, waterfowl hunting, they require you to use steel shot, and that's far more popular than this kind of hunting. I have a hard time finding BB in lead. If you want to spend the money on like BB and the heavy shot, that also may be an option. Anyway, with that, I hope you like this episode. I hope you see hunting as something more than just being able to post a picture of a giant buck with a big rack on Instagram. I'm not saying not to do that, and I'm not saying not to be proud if you take a big buck. I'm not saying not to hang it on your wall. I got no problem with that. But there's a much bigger hunting world out there, and don't just... I guess if you're into hunting for the popularity, for the culture of it, you mostly go through that afterwards. You can sit and drink Budweiser with your friends around the cooler. That's fine, but that's not me. I hunt because I enjoy the skill. I enjoy stalking up on an animal and killing it. I don't apologize for that. If it's doing it for the right reasons and morally and ethically and lawfully, I don't apologize for that. But hopefully this episode has given you some ideas. Maybe you don't have to wait for deer season. Maybe you can go out and hunt a coon tonight with a lantern or a headlamp. Maybe you want to be an expert hunter, a good stalker. You know, foxes are pretty hard to hunt in my experience. If you're able to locate, track, and sneak up on a fox, it's going to make you that much better at doing it on a deer. There's a big world of hunting out there. Don't limit yourself to things that everybody else thinks is cool. Don't limit yourself to things that gobble and things that have antlers on the top of their head. With that, man, I want to say thanks for listening. If you stay tuned through all that, you must like the episode. You must like the podcast. If you do, please consider supporting by becoming a patron. You can do that with the links that should be included with this episode, or just go to goodshepherdtraining.com. Also, if you want to see some pictures of me hunting and doing stuff like that, some stuff on there is just for patrons, some stuff on there is for everybody. I think there's some pictures of me on successful buffalo hunt and coyote and all kinds of things on there. Anyway, goodshepherdtraining.com if you want to check that out. And if you want to be part of that inner circle where we talk about this stuff all the time, consider going there. Again, scroll down and find the link in the notes. Today's tactical tip. We talked about hunting. We talked about hunting in tribes, the way we did in the past. If you've never done this, think about your adversary, your quarry, the animal you're trying to kill with your group of men. I guess technically you could do this with 2 people, but generally 4 or more. Either knowing your landscape because you live there and are from there, looking on a map, Google Earth, or on X, or whatever you use. Even an old, archaic topographical map. Looking at the landscape, reading the landscape, and knowing the habits of your animal, knowing their lifestyle, and there's a lot that goes into this. Try and picture where those animals are going to go when they're pressured, and then when you push them out of that pressured sanctuary, where they're going to flee and in what direction. Try and orchestrate that. Hunting like this is not a stupid man's game, it's a thinking man's game. Like people think of door kickers in the tactical world, as I have been for a large chunk of my life. Tomb clearing, urban warfare, things like that. Not for the brute beast. They're a thinking man's game if you want to survive. Become an old man in that profession. It's a thinking man's game. Thinking on your toes, thinking on your feet. Likewise, hunting animals in a tribe is the same way. A lot goes into it. Let me give you some broad generalities. Try and make that animal do what you want him to do and then kill him. Think about islands. Maybe actually an island like on the water, but think of an island of thick, dense brush, a field. You see this in farm country and things like that. That's likely where that animal is going to go if it's pressured. And when you push it out of there, where is it going to go? Likely avenues of egress. A ditch, a creek bank, something like that, where he's going to try and escape. So position your men, get the animals in that area, and then have your men ready in ambush when they flush out of that area. Think of it like hunting chess. If you're doing any kind of hunting like this, you're like crossing a fence or climbing a tree or something, I'd suggest not having your gun on a sling on your shoulder or wherever. Have it at the ready, at the low ready, at the high ready. This is not sitting on a deer stand and waiting for 20 minutes for the deer to cover 20 yards. This is that animal's going to jump up and be gone, usually pretty quick, unless some anomaly happens and it just jumps up in front of you and stops, which is great. But a lot of times, it's going to be a quick jump shot. Be ready for it. Anyway, some tactical tips of the day, some tactical tactics of the day. There's a lot of crossover in the hunting and tactical world. A lot of great men in history who were great hunters were also great warriors. Talked about the ancient Greeks. Look at Theodore Roosevelt. George Washington, we talked about. Great hunter. General of the Revolution. And there are many more examples. With that, let's get into the tactical verse of the day. Tactical verse of the day. Yes, the Bible does talk about hunting. The lazy do not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. With that, men, get out there. If you're called to, be a hunter, be a killer. But either way, be a godly man. Be a righteous man. Have a blessed day.